He was the head of the product publicity with, let's say, O&B.
Oh yeah,
When they were actually employees at Monsanto before they left to form O&B.
I didn't know that's how that worked.
Oh yeah, that's where they got, and they took all of the clients, and they took Monsanto, and it was one of Monsanto's corporate downsizing, where they could cut the head count and the bottom line and move everything over to the agency side. That was a holding pattern, and I knew it, and they did too. So then a public affairs job opened up with Jerry Ingenthong and Lisa Drake and Tom Hogeem and that whole group. And Jerry and I were like oil and water. We were about the same age. And his first question was, why in the hell with the silver anvil are you working here? And that was a good question. The real answer was, well, because I need income, number one, and number two, I'm hoping that something else opens up. That's when he said, I have the perfect job for you. Go out there, no one's going to bother you. Just keep me out of trouble and do whatever you want to do. And so I did. And that's was the basis of coming back later and having the knowledge of all of the problems we had and the personalities, the opposition to genetic engineering at the beginning. That's how we started out. And then after that, when it kind of petered out, they just kept me on board, I think more in an apology, because during one of the downsizings, there was a mandate that one person out of every department had to be let go, and it was across the line. Jerry and Jim picked me, and it was a case where there wasn't any big problems out at Chesterfield or the opposition. The registrations were coming along fairly good. No problems there. And the idea that they just didn't need anyone. And so I was let go. That's when I started my own company. Like I said, I'd been used to this every 5 years. And I'm 78. Every 5 years, I've had a significant job change, either in responsibilities or employer. So over the years, my wife became it was kind of okay, what are you going to do now? And how long am I going to be the breadwinner? We can coast for another 3 months, but you got to get a job before then, type of thing. The whole thing changed, and they kept me on because the cotton farmers or the cotton industry had become very skittish about BT cotton. And the potato growers at that same time were saying, we don't want BT potatoes because of the controversy and the consumer backlash. Since I had been put out in Chesterfield to do what you wanted to do, I recruited and cultivated and educated a group of 12 cotton farmers who had regional reputations of being opinion leaders. And we had some hell of a good times on our retreats.
Yeah.
There was the one time when Jerry infrequently would ask me, he says, I only have one question. Your American Express bill this month was $12,000, and I noticed that there were 2 bottles of champagne at $1,000 a bottle. You gotta pull it back a little. But the significance of that was Jim Tobin was head of the cotton at that time. And he was really at a loss because Monsanto was on the verge of not commercializing BT cotton under the farmer relationship, where the farmers would pay a technology premium. Jim was aware of my cotton farmer committee, pulled them together, talked to them, and saw their passion and their support and their opinion that properly positioned and with good communications, the cotton farmers would accept it. Jim exposed that committee to the brass, the CEO and the president, and based on that, the decision was to go ahead and try it. Jim has apologized more than once in his life for firing me. And I say, hey, look, no big deal. But I'm being very honest, towards the last years, I really questioned why they were keeping me. It was, if I had been them, I would have severed it. But then I would look at the whole span and say, the year that I was let go, I was 55 and the oldest one of a group of 60 that were in this downsizing group. And they were very concerned that I was going to have some kind of age discrimination lawsuit. And they paid very nicely with a confidentiality agreement and a non-litigation clause and everything. But there was still, even with Rob, there were times when Rob would give one of his barbs. Example, we had a photo shoot scheduled for Chesterfield because I was part of the group that put in the new visitor center. And that turned into being over $1 million that was not budgeted. And again, I looked at the finances, the way that Monsanto handled the finances, not knowing I was an employee, racking up over $1 million, doing the lobby redesign, and a photo shoot. At that time, I don't know what it is now, but at that time there was a group of plantings of the BT plants in a round circle, and some of them had lost their leaves. So I was bent over at the waist picking them up, and Rob comes in and says, wow, now they have you doing you're doing what you're best at, or it was some kind of good-natured barb. And I said, well, at least since all you can see is my ass, you know that you have tried to kick me that ass out several times and haven't succeeded. And he laughs and says, yeah, I remember those. Anyway, it's been fun. I can look back and say there were certainly times when the immediacy, having two girls, leaving Farm Bureau and coming to Monsanto was the first year my daughter was a freshman at SIUE. So there was a lot of financial periods. But one thing that never wavered was the confidence in my wife. She was the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I miss her sorely.
How did you meet her?
High school. She was the daughter of the vice president of the leading savings and loan in Bloomington, Illinois. I was the son of a divorced parents whose mother kept the family together by being on the assembly line at a GE plant. I lived in a converted four-room, or an old house with 4 units, 2 up, 2 down. I was the epitome of the wrong side of the tracks and the wrong societal level. And my in-laws didn't hide it. And that was an interesting, because again, my wife, she would tell you, I knew that Jim was the guy I was going to marry the first time I saw him walking down the high school hallway. And she knew her mind. She was a very strong woman. Anyway, my relationship with the in-laws was polite and kind of stilted until I was invited to the governor's mansion for the Governor Thompson, or Walker, Governor Walker's friends and family Christmas party. Because I had worked with Roberta and I'd worked with the governor, and they had become very familiar with my two daughters. They were always asking about them. Roberta gave them both handmade Christmas gifts that year, and it was a formal event. Long evening dress and tuxedo. So when we stopped by the in-laws' house to have the photographs taken, at that point they were saying, okay, maybe this guy could make something of it. So you look back and you say there's all these very amusing, very insightful, very interesting segments of a life that are unique to the people who participated in them. So that's the way it's been. And it's led me now to saying, okay, the last thing my wife would want would be for me to become a hermit or to act my age and be content with crossword puzzles and jigsaw puzzles. And she'd be saying, okay, you've been around the house long enough, get out and get something, do something. That's where I am right now.
You raised two daughters.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you had your first child?
Well, my mother had to sign for me to get married because I wasn't 21. We were married 58 years, and I guess Sarah came along 18 months later. Now that's another interesting story. My boss at the Farm Bureau was a trustee of Southern Illinois University, Board of Trustees. So they had the governing board meetings once a month. He was busy, and the agreement was he would take the position if Farm Bureau would allow me to be an AA for him for that job. So I reviewed the agendas, made notes, researched. My job was to make sure that when he sat at the round table, he asked the intelligent question that got the "oh" kind of response. And that meant we went down the night before the meeting. Typically, I would go and we would be ordering dinner, and then I'd leave and call home just to say, how's everything? Everything's fine. How are the kids? And one night it took me longer and longer, and the food came, and Bill, my boss, sent it back. I finally came back, and he says, trouble at home? And I said, well, there was an unexpected telephone call. He says, can you share it? And I said, well, yeah, my wife sold the house. And he says, well, that's good. Congratulations. I said, Bill, it wasn't for sale. And it wasn't. like I told you, she was a strong woman. And we had our first one, and it was it was a starter home, but it was brand new construction. 3 little bedrooms, bi-level, unfinished basement. We had talked that before the second one came, we would need to have a bigger house. And that was something that I'm saying, yeah, hon, right, that's on our... So when I got the telephone call, I said, okay, that's great. What did you sign? She said, everything. And I said, well, what's everything? Well, I signed the acceptance, but because the real estate gal was a high school friend of ours, both of ours. I had to sign the listing papers too, so that she could get her commission. So I came home the next day after the board meeting, and the for sale sign was in the front yard with a big sold on it. And immediately all of the neighbors came over, because we were in a starter community, and all of our neighbors were about the same age and everything. So it was coming over. Well, we didn't know it was for sale. And I said, neither did I. So we had 48 days to find a new house. So we looked at, I can't imagine how many over Easter weekend and holidays, to find a house that we could afford, and one that was going to be the house we should have waited for. But again, she said it was a good deal. She said, Claudia was showing a couple from Chicago around Bloomington Normal, different subdivisions, just saying, here's what it looks like. And she was in our subdivision, and the couple said, that's the kind of house we'd like. That's the style we'd like. And Claudia said, well, I just happen to know the people who live there. Let me see if they'll let you look on the inside. I wasn't home. Kids Sarah was sleeping. Alita said, sure, come on in, take a look. And so they took a look and liked it, went back out to the car, and Claudia came back in and said, they're offering you a really good price for this, more than anything else is sold in this market for this kind of house. And I said, fine.
It's a special kind of marriage where your wife can sell your house and you're able to laugh about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was tense, and I had to admit that I probably would have been a lot more cautious and said, well, fine, thanks, we'll think about it. But she was unique in many ways. But that's the one at Monsanto when I would tell that, and then we'd have husband and wife activities, socializing and stuff like that. That's the one that people would come and say to her, I have one question. Did you really sell the house? Or was just Jim making that up?
So, Jim, you're wearing 2 rings. Tell me about those rings.
Oh, the 25th wedding anniversary ring replaced one that was kind of damaged wedding ring. That is my father-in-law's, the one that didn't think I was going to account to much. He was I really liked him. We got along really well after the first couple of years. And my mother-in-law, I think she respected the way I was behaving as a husband. And she kind of remained off, kind of cool. But that was just her nature anyway. Al and I, my father-in-law and I, got to be really good friends. He had troubles with his employment. He worked with a guy that made some bad loans, and the financial effect on the savings and loan was very negative. The board thought that Al should have called called the other partner out, and he didn't. So they forced a retirement, which he wasn't prepared for financially. It was an early one, and there really wasn't much that he could do. Lived on a Social Security and a very small pension. He was very proud. Alita and I were doing okay. There would be times when he would need money. My mother-in-law would say, "I don't see why. He just doesn't pay the bills. He just looks at them and puts them aside. Then they call about it and everything's delinquent. I don't understand why. He just can't pay the bills and get it over with." And Lita and I would look at it and say, "Because they don't have the money." Anyway, over a period of time, Alita and I would loan him money, and being very proud, he always insisted on having a formal IOU note. So there was always these little pieces of paper that acknowledged that we had loaned him $1,000 at 8% interest and yada, 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 yada. When that became awkward on his part, that's when he said, "I want you to have this." So it was known that, and he made note that when he died, the ring and a watch were mine, and there was no question. And there are 5 kids, 3 boys, but he made it very clear that the watch and the ring were mine, and it was appreciated. But more than anything, it maintained his sense of pride. He wasn't taking handouts. He wasn't begging. This was a business transaction. So that's where that came from.
It's a good story.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So, do you have grandchildren?
No. Yes, I do. Emily, my youngest daughter, has triplets who are 23 years old. All of them have graduated from college, 2 from ISU and 1 from the U of I. The U of I is the girl, and there's 2 boys. And she went to Loyola for a pre-med intensive course, which was a year, and she just finished that, and she's now interviewing for med schools. The other is the boy is a fantastic artist. You look at his work, and the advisors, he basically put himself through school by scholarships, artistic scholarships at ISU.
Wow.
His advisors and his friends say, you need to find yourself, and you need to find a style that is yours. So he's still producing art, which is edgy. And the other one is interested in forestry or park ranger. He has an environmental degree. So he's interviewing or looking for a job where he can be out taking care of the animals and the habitat and the wildlife. Typical, I think in today's world, the pressure on them to do what my generation did is different. And at 23, I look at them and say, equivalent, maybe they're emotionally and prepared as an 18 or 19-year-old would have been. The early 20s, I don't know, across the board with people that I know, the early 20s are still up for grabs, and let them find themselves and let them come to grips with who they are and what they want. They're both good kids. They're all working while they're looking. They're self-supporting. Do they have a career yet or a direction in life? No. but their mother is an exceptionally strong woman. And she has her PhD in psychology. She is not a registered psychologist. The Tripps were born prematurely. And she finished her master's, or her PhD dissertation, and then just basically committed herself to the development of the preemies. And that was a full-time job. My wife was a pediatric nurse. On a regular basis, a monthly basis, my wife would take a week off from her job, and she had been with a group of doctors to the degree that they said, you can do whatever you want, make your own hours, just come back when you're done. So then once a month, my wife would go up and spend a week with my younger daughter and the Tripps, bonding with them, but also giving my daughter some breaks, and also giving my younger daughter a source of medical information which you couldn't find any better. My wife's role in the whole family has been, before I could go to the doctors, this is what's wrong with my nephew, the family member. And she would say, well, the first thing you need to do is this, and if it doesn't, then try this, then go to the doctor. Which I can relate to because my mother was a worrywarts and hovered. And when Sarah was born, sniffles or runny nose, my mother was, she needs to go to the doctor, she needs to go to the doctor. And I'd say, Alita, do you think we should go to the doctors? And so Alita would look at me and say, why? So I could tell you what to do in an office setting rather than here at the kitchen table. That was good. The oldest one is a registered nurse, SSM, been there for 25 years, office manager, basically has the same role as her mother in that she has basically been told you can basically work whatever you want, wherever you want, however you want, but keep things moving.
So the final question, your grandchildren have no idea what it's like to be in your 70s. What should they know about getting older?
I hope they can look back and say, my wife was 76 when she died, and she acted as if she were still in her 50s as far as her outlook on life, her quest for new experiences, her desire to travel. Our motto has been, we've got things, wake up, get out of bed. We have things to go, places to meet. We have places to go, things to do, people to meet. So get on with it. And I hope that when they look back, they say, he didn't act his age. And I think that's what I'm hoping they take out of it.
Well, Jim Altumus, thank you so much for coming by today.
It's fun. That's fun.